I'll just quickly introduce my panelists. And I'm sure none of these would be new to you. So I'll start with Fatma. Fatma leads, and she's the CEO of Abacus. And while I try and introduce my panelists, I would try and cover the aspect that they will be covering while we have this panel discussion. So Fatma is she's a known name. She's a technology leader. And I would call her the enabler of technology on this panel. Moving on, we have, I would call him the veteran, the CEO of Techno Group, Mr. Amir Alawala. Amir, of course, will be covering the mobile manufacturing industry, which is very critical. And I assure you, if you pay a little bit of attention, there are so many interesting facts that Amir and the others have to share that I'm sure you would enjoy the next 20, 25, or 30 minutes. I know we are the ones between you and your lunch, so I'm very sensitive to that. And I'll try and have a very focused, concise conversation. Moving on, Imran leads Kareem. Kareem, if I close my eyes and I take Kareem out of my life, I'm going to face some difficulties. So that is the impact Kareem and then Daraz has on us. And we are very lucky to have Ehsan Saya with us, who is the CEO of Daraz. So Ehsan, thank you very much for the great work you and Daraz have done in the e-commerce space for our country. And then last not the least, Mr. Abdur Rahman, who is the CEO of Digit, another major mobile manufacturer. And I'm sure Abdur Rahman also has to share so many interesting stories and interesting facts that was at least an eye-opener for me when I was preparing for this panel. So without wasting any more time, Fatma, I'll start with you. Let's set the expectations. What do we expect from this industry of mobile manufacturers and digital service providers? Where do you think we are? Where do you think we should be? So that then you and me both can ask the others of how they're performing. Please.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Asif. And it's a pleasure to be here, and kudos to the organizers for putting it together. I think we've heard some very interesting success stories as well as the enablement in the earlier sessions as well. And also I must commend that Ms. Aisha also mentioned the enablement and the focus that the government has, which is part and parcel of the partnership that is required to take Pakistan forward from a digital perspective. So what I'll do is put a perspective on what is the global market size, some of the numbers that were touched upon earlier as well. You're looking at potentially a $5.3 trillion market globally in all of these categories of hardware development, where the mobile manufacturers and infrastructure development players play a significant role. You have the telecom operators, you have IT and IT-enabled services, BPO, etc. So all of these categories put together have a potential of $5.3 trillion. And it means that when we look at the technology market, it also leads into a greater business case for collaboration, because it has to be an integrated approach. There is the demand, of course. The mobile manufacturers are supplying the devices that are required to enable customers, consumers, businesses to do business. And then you have to have the app development or the software development or IT-enabled services to develop those platforms for the integration. And then the connectors, where we have representatives on this panel as well, where not only from a financial perspective, of course, the banking industry, where you're looking at open banking and digitization of financial transactions, with the telecoms playing a very significant value-driven approach that is extremely important. And the third is the retailers and how they're connecting to different industries. So if you just frame this at the heart of what is happening from a digital transformation is also financial transactions being enabled. They say, what is the best definition for open banking? I say it's a passport to, giving your money the passport to go seamlessly through different platforms and different environments as well. However, the smart device that you have will allow you to connect to different sectors. So the enablement of the technology sector and development of the technology sector is enabling many industries, actually all industries. And it is not just your retail. You look at health, you look at education, etc. So it is extremely important for us to keep that in mind and say, how do we ensure that the back-end architecture is developed to facilitate the supply and demand. You may have a demand for smart devices, but if the smart devices cannot be enabled through continued consistent internet connectivity, through the bandwidth, through the outreach, plus with the infrastructure, we talked about 5G in the earlier session as well, the kind of investment that is required, and then just the applications. Mobile applications themselves is almost a $1 billion industry as we speak. So there is great potential, and I believe that it is extremely important to not only enable these particular different subcategories or sectors, whether they're manufacturers, enablers, the retailers, but also look at the governance mechanism from a long-term perspective. The last thing I would say is the human capital development, because as we go into a digitized future, we need to ensure that we unlearn and relearn and upskill and reskill our talent. We do have, unfortunately, a challenge within Pakistan, given certain economic uncertainties and some political instability, that consistency of policy is a challenge. And in that, you see an exodus of resources going to different markets which are coming up, which is KSA or Middle East or any other market. I would say our challenge is not that they're leaving, because then they hopefully become good ambassadors to Pakistan wherever they go. That is also very important. I would say, who is the replacement? What kind of quality human capital do we have? And lastly, to make develop confidence and trust to facilitate investors to come in. That means not inflows only into Pakistan, but also outflows for the value that these investors are looking for. So in a summarized version, that's how I would start my conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatma, for sharing the insights and also giving us an idea of the scale of this market. When Fatma speaks about $5.3 trillion, that can be a game changer. Hamare mulk ke liye, it can be easily a game changer. As I said, we are very lucky. We have very diverse panelists here today, and when Fatma was describing the overall equation, the mobile manufacturers is where I would like to start. And again, we're very lucky to have Amir Saab here with us. Amir Saab, क्या state है? Let's address the elephant in the room. हम मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पाकिस्तान में कैसी कर रहे हैं? फिलहाल हम कहाँ पर हैं? हमारी पॉलिसीज कितनी सपोर्टिव है और हमारा एनवायरनमेंट कितना कंड्यूसिव है? And what do you think we should do moving forward? How can we have a bigger share of this $5.3 trillion that Fatma just mentioned?
Ji, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Asif, thank you very much for a very exaggerated introduction. Veteran जो हैं वो काफ़ी बूढ़े से लोग होते हैं, तो अभी आप उस फहरिस्त में शामिल ना करें. And Fatma has very well explained the kind of opportunity and potential the entire ecosystem offers. And I think mobile phones is one of the elements of that big opportunity. But I want to start with a story. I want to tell you how this industry came into being in Pakistan. And I'm talking in terms of smartphones. Because feature phones were being manufactured in Pakistan since 2016. But the industry was never able to enter the smartphone sector. And this is when our company came in. And we, belonging to the industrial sector since more than 30 years, we decided to enter this business. And for this business, we entered into a joint venture with one of the leading mobile phone manufacturers in the world, which is Transsion. And we started by doing something very outrageous. In 2019, when we established 2 manufacturing plants, it was not feasible to make mobile phones or smartphones in Pakistan. an imported mobile phone used to cost almost the same as a locally manufactured mobile phone. So we had this big issue where we were thinking, why are we doing this? And in fact, Transsion was also asking us, why do you want to do this? Because there is no advantage, and the government does not have a policy, there is no incentive. Why do you want to not do moving of boxes, just import and sell, and make some money for yourself? But because we had a certain vision, we went ahead with the project and we invested almost 1 billion rupees of hard-earned money. And after this plant was set up, in fact, we set up 2 plants with a total capacity of more than 800,000 smartphones every month. We went to the government that this is an opportunity, we've already done it, and we would like you to support the industry by a reasonably incentivized cascading tariff. So what happened was a lot of struggle. Unfortunately, there was a wave of opposition. Everybody who was doing mobile phones or smartphones at that time was opposed to the idea. They said this is nonsense, it will just be assembly, it will just be screwdriver assembly, and this is going to not add any value, and this is a bad idea. Because please keep in mind that moving completely assembled mobiles from China or Korea or Vietnam, bringing them in and selling through the distribution network is a very easy thing to do as compared to what we are doing now. So there was a lot of opposition. I think I must give credit to Wahjoc Daud Sahab. He took the initiative. EDB spearheaded. Asim was there, and somehow the policy went through the ECC and went through the cabinet and got implemented. Now something very interesting happened. Of course, we got a head start. At that time, we suddenly Transsion with Techno, Infinix, and ITEL. We were doing 3 brands. And suddenly the market share started to go up. They had a market share of about 10% at that time. It went up to 50% straight because there was a price advantage. We did not keep that tax benefit. Of course, it was passed on to the consumer. And then everybody else started to realize what has hit them. So there was a scramble among the other brands to set up the plant, but it takes time. It takes about 8 to 9 months to set up a mobile phone manufacturing plant, because as it may sound simple to assemble a smartphone, but it is not. It is a very complex process, and I welcome anybody who wants to come in and have a look at our plant. You're most welcome. Come over and have a look. You would be surprised how small components are picked by tweezers and assembled into a phone, and the process control and the technology transfer is very, very interesting. So the next plant that came, the policy came in June 2020. The first next plant after us was Vivo. It was set up in Faisalabad in a hurry. They started in March 2021. That was followed by Oppo in Lahore, again in a hurry, in June 2021. That was followed by Samsung. Samsung had said, if there is going to be a policy, we'll pull back from Pakistan. They told the minister, along with the Korean ambassador, we'll pull out of Pakistan, a big threat. But the minister at that time, he said, all right, if you want to pull out, you may. Because Samsung said our phones cannot be produced in Pakistan. The technology does not exist. But then Samsung entered and set up their factory in the Bin Qasim Industrial Park in Karachi. And this was followed by Xiaomi. And Xiaomi was followed by Nokia. And today the situation is, which personally makes me feel very satisfied and happy, alhamdulillah, that we as a company triggered a process which led to every big brand of the world other than Huawei, which has a technology issue, and iPhone, which is not feasible, the market share is very small, to come and make a factory in Pakistan and give employment to around 40,000 young men and women in the country. Now then the next step was even more interesting. When the plant was set up, we had around 2,000 employees. Average age is less than 30 years. ब्रिगेडियर साहब आपकी भी तवज्जो चाहिए सर मुझे. ब्रिगेडियर साहब, सर आपकी तवज्जो चाहिए, गपशप तो प्राय साहब से लगती रहेगी. So we hired 12 Chinese experts. We had 12 departments. For every department, we hired one Chinese expert, which was nominated by Transsion. It used to cost us $5,000 every month. But what we did was, in 2020, we hired from every university in Pakistan. We had 300 engineers, all below the age of 30. And we assigned, with every Chinese guy, we assigned 3 Pakistanis, and we said, your job is in 1.5 years, you have to take over his job. This is your job. This is your KPI. We don't want him in the factory after 1.5 years. And you know, today, we have about 2,500 people working in the group, in the mobile 3 plants we have in Karachi, and we have only 1 Chinese who is the plant head and a contractual requirement of the joint venture. And he is free the whole day. The entire operation is run by Pakistanis, and from supply chain to production to quality to new model introduction to IT and IMEI uploading, and there are so many processes. It is remarkable how our people can grasp the technology and take the responsibilities that nobody could thought. Even I was skeptical that they would be able to do it, but they did. Now, the question is, where do we go on from here? I would say what has happened here in Xiaomi's factory, which Paracha Saab is operating, in Oppo, Vivo's factories, in Samsung factory, this technology transfer has happened. It's not just happened in our company. It has happened everywhere, because all the Chinese have transferred, genuinely they have been sincere in transferring the technology to the Pakistani counterparts. Now, what is the next step? You see, when you look at any industry in the world, there are a few steps that you cannot skip over. The first step in any business is import and distribute. It's just moving boxes, as I said. The next step is starting the assembly, which means that's the first part of the value chain, which you start, import the components, do CKD or SKD, and start assembling, which means you are moving jobs from China to Pakistan. Then the next step is indigenization. Indigenization means you would have to target a few parts, like in case of mobile phones or smartphones, charger, battery, hands-free cable, charging cable, blah, blah. Packaging. You target those components. Now, that's the third step. You indigenize those parts. To indigenize those parts, you have to bring technology from the Chinese part manufacturer, which is not the Chinese assembler in China. They are also buying the parts from some other company. The fourth step is then going into raw materials. And when I talk about raw materials, I'm talking about, in this case, it's the motherboard, it's the semiconductors, it's the electronic parts, it's the LCD, and then the last stage is research and development. So this is the logical migration. I think what we have done is from the phase 1 to we've moved on to phase 2, and the next step is going to be indigenization of components. Now, there was a discussion why the indigenization has not happened and so on and so forth. I want to tell you that if there is a situation where for making the charger, if I have to import the raw material, which is plastic resin, if there is a 20% custom duty on importing plastic resin, and there is a 0% duty on importing the complete charger, who would be crazy enough to start to set up a plant for making chargers in Pakistan? It's not logical. There was a Chinese company which set up a charger plant in Lahore about 1.5 years ago in anticipation of a indigenization, cascaded tariff. The tariff did not come, and the company shut down operation and went back to China. They sold the plant. So there are stories like these everywhere. And the minister was very right in asking, we are such a big market, 5th largest population, one of the top 10 mobile phone markets in the world. Why don't the big companies come and invest in Pakistan? Are they not interested in making money? Are they not interested in increasing their revenues? Our company sells 550,000 smartphones every month. The sales volume is 13 billion rupees a month. So, दूसरी companies नहीं चाहती हैं.
Ahmed, first of all, thank you very much. You gave
Yeah,
us
but I just want to conclude here.
Please.
The reason is simple. The foreign investor does not trust us. They think हम पाकिस्तान आके फंस जाएंगे. They look at us how we would look at investment in Burundi. So that is the problem. It's a trust problem. Minister साहब ने कहा कि 3% का जो rebate है वो हम आपको देंगे. Policy आए हुए 4 साल हो चुके हैं. Now the investor is thinking, the next investor is thinking that we can't trust the government of Pakistan. This trust is very important to start.
This is the downside. But honestly, Ahmed, thank you very much. So the not so sensible idea is working well for our country, right? So that's the great news. I mean, today, the numbers that Ahmed just shared with all of us, it is amazing to see the potential of Pakistan. And this takes me to my next panelist, Mr. Abdur Rahman, who's the CEO of Digit. Abdur Rahman sir, this is what we are doing in Pakistan. What can we do for the globe? I mean, if we have the assembly plants, if we have the human resource, hoping and assuming that our policies will further improve, what is the export potential from Pakistan? Because if I am not wrong, and as per my discussion previously with all of you, if we do it right, this mobile manufacturing sector can become the largest exporter from Pakistan. I'm asking you this question with this understanding. So what do you think is our potential when it comes to global arena? What all can we do?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Asif. I would like to address the export, but before that, I think that when this policy came, like Amir said, it was purely for the mobile handsets manufacturing. So moving onwards, when we are focusing on the localization of the components, so I think we should also include the other electronics products into this policy. For example, tablets, wearables, laptops, and IoT and whatnot. So let us try to make Pakistan an electronics manufacturing hub rather than just focusing on one particular product. And hopefully the government will address this issue, number one. Secondly, when we talk about exports, so exports, there is a lot of potential for Pakistan to export mobile phones outside. I'll give you an example that if you consider the current exports of Pakistan, we are only dependent on textile, and now we are adding the IT services export as well. But if we talk about the physical goods, it's just the textile. So we need to have the right policies to ensure that we can do big numbers of exports from Pakistan. Be as a local brand, because we don't manufacture for other brands, and we are a local owned Pakistani brand by the name of Digit. What we have tried to achieve is that it should not only be made in Pakistan export, but also brand Pakistan export as well. So we were in discussions with the Vodacom group, which is part of Vodafone in Africa, and just recently in November, we made the announcement with them. And when they signed up with us, their first question was that whether you're a Pakistani company, how you are going to do this, because this will be something very unique and new, because they are in almost 8 countries in Africa right now operating. So we convinced them that not only we will produce these products, but they will be branded, Pakistan branded products. So we have co-branded with them as Digit and Vodacom, and the first shipment from Pakistan will be exported next month from from our facility. But the challenge of this is that when we try to evaluate the cost, generally when we see जिस तरह बाकी ममालिक में अपनी कोई भी प्रोडक्ट भेजनी है तो आप कंपैरिजन करेंगे, तो you see that what is the cost to export from here, or whether you should actually get a product CBU from any other place and export it. So we have figured it out that it's close to 7 to 8% is the gap in the cost. If we produce here and sell, it will be more expensive for us rather than taking it as a CBU product from maybe even China. I mean, we can get it produced there. So the right government policy, if it is there, and Amir Saab always keeps saying that it should be a fully baked policy rather than half-baked policy. So that's what's needed. And if we do that, I think there's a lot of potential. And one last comment I would also like to make is that with the collaboration of the digital players and the platforms, we are seeing a lot of interesting new startups coming up in education, in fintech, in health tech. So if we can collaborate, club, and then export when we are exporting the product, we export these technologies as well. So there's a lot of potential, but the right policies fully implemented have to be there. if they are not there, I don't see a bright future for exports.
Thank you very much, Abdurrahman Saab. So, everyone, the potential is there. We have proof of concepts in place as we speak, where Pakistani manufacturers are exporting to external countries, right? With this hope that our policies will be favorable to the manufacturing industry, I want to move on to, and by the way, veteran has nothing to do with age, because I see another veteran when it comes to e-commerce industry. So Essen, with local manufacturing policies in place, industry growing, what do you think is the impact on e-commerce, on online stores? How do you think it is impacting, and what do you want more for this industry to further thrive in our country?
Thank you for the kind words. I'm glad it doesn't have to do with age. I think first and foremost, you have to identify that we're an app-first platform. So about 90% of our users and our purchases are done on the app. So that, for us, without a mobile, our business essentially shuts down. And in order for our business to expand, mobile expansion is compulsory. It's necessary. We cannot grow our business in any other way. And I think for us, the way we're able to utilize it is that is first and foremost, it gives us a lot more information about the users and be able to really solve their problems in a much more granular and targeted manner. If we know what are the things that you're interested in, what are the areas that you would like to buy from, we're able to advertise and target you a lot better. Second thing, what we're able to do by having an increase in mobile phone penetration is we're able to really work on the digital payment side. And you can see all the platforms that have been working on digital payments in the last many years. For us, it's very important because if you look at an order that's paid digitally, the rejection rate is about 1%. Whereas if it's cash on delivery, it can be up more than 10%. Because someone will come to your house and you'll say, cash nahi aap kal aayega. But that kal aayega there's a long leg of logistics that's tied behind it and creates a lot of inefficiencies. And the third leg that actually surprises me and really motivates me the most is that mobile phone it democratizes earnings and the ability to make money. Today, mashallah, on our platform we have 100,000 sellers. And every one of those sellers has a mobile phone because on the go they can receive their orders, they can reply to customers, they can engage in retail activities no matter what they're doing in their life. In fact, a new area that's really emerged is the area of content creators and influencers. And on 11/11, which I hope all of you bought on 11/11, we had about 10% of our sales came from content creators. And one in particular, one lady, in just her earnings on affiliates was over $10,000 in those 4 or 5 days. And the ability for a lot of these content creators to become influencers on our platform, it was only able to evolve because of the mobile phone. There was and it's very interesting. You would imagine an influencer on Instagram, and that sort of influencer would not be successful at all, perhaps, in selling you something. So, the kind of influencer that would emerge on a platform like Daraz, and that would be able to convince you to buy on Daraz, would perhaps be very, very different. It would be someone that you would be able to engage with at a granular level and that you can relate to. In fact, there was a lady on Instagram that I think 5 or 10,000 sellers, and when she says, buy ye cheez khareeden, and her handle is Tired Desi Mom. And all the Tired Desi Moms are following that Tired Desi Mom. So when she says buy this, all of them are going to transact. Whereas the guy with 1 million followers, when he would say buy this, really, I don't relate, I'm not going to buy it. So it's really, allowed this democratization of distribution of wealth and ability for people to be able to think outside the box and make money. And today on our platform, with 100,000 sellers, we have more and more influencers that are emerging that are able to make money. And so for us, it's super important, the localization of and manufacturing of mobile phones and the policy that supports its expansion. Because without that, to be honest, businesses like ours cannot flourish. So without that foundation and without the right policies to increase that base, companies like ours will always struggle, because we are very fortunate that we have the backbone of a company like Alibaba. But you don't have so many of those giants in the world that will take on the risks that's associated, and especially given some of the lack of trust that Amr Sahab also spoke about. So I think those things are important to keep in mind, because it's extremely important for our success and the success of all the businesses that are trying to create and democratize distribution of wealth, that the mobile phone penetration increases.
Well, thank you very much, Yasin. This is very insightful. Moving on, Imran, you're also a major digital service provider, right, in the shape of Careem. How do you think these policies for mobile manufacturing, on one side, financial availability of financial instruments, as Yasin mentioned, or lack of that thing, cash on delivery, and the challenges and how it impacts? How do you look from Careem's perspective? What is or what can be improved further within our policies, within the manufacturing sector, that can really help grow other digital services like Careem in our country?
Thank you. I think overall, जब हम इर्तिका की बात कर रहे हैं इस पूरी industry की, one of the more important things I believe that we also have to keep in perspective when you're talking about the growth of the digital economy. You start with smartphone penetration, we've talked about it, internet accessibility, and then a tech-savvy population. But then eventually also what people are doing with all of that, right? And the thought leadership, conscious thought leadership behind it, which I feel could be a little bit better than what it is today, including but not limited to policy frameworks and regulatory frameworks, right? Here is where I believe organizations like Careem and Daraz, as a matter of fact, come into play with a very big responsibility. Talking specifically about policy frameworks and regulations, so for us, of course, regulations around technology are supremely important, but also, as Minister Saab mentioned a little bit back in his speech, ancillary frameworks that connect with technology frameworks. For example, in the case of Careem, transport regulation, right? All of these have to inevitably work together in a cohesive manner with a very sort of consciously defined vision for us to be able to take a step forward, right? Credit where it's due, it's a lot better than where it was, say 5, 6, 7 years back. But I also still feel that there are two things. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, a very conscious effort to define a vision on the regulatory and policy framework side that encompasses pretty much all industries that impact this, but also an unapologetic dedication to continuity. I cannot go into a regulator every time and hear, sir, वो secretary आपका transfer हो गया है, या अब तो कोई नए साहब आ गए हैं, या इसको अब शुरू से देखेंगे, या कोई ये मसला आएगा, या कोई चीज़ निकल के आएगी. This is essentially very critical for us to continue going forward and making those leaps and bounds where everybody is talking about without going back to step zero. So between having the right vision and then continuing on that vision unapologetically without any cause to change it, right? If we're committed and dedicated to these two things, I do believe, regardless of what industry I'm talking about, we will take those steps forward.
No, thank you very much. So, Imran and Yasin, both of you, assuming a situation where we have good smartphones being manufactured in Pakistan at a larger scale, so the right policies supporting the industry, we have the right financial instruments. What do you think is going to be the impact of digital services market itself within Pakistan, and what would be the possibilities for us expanding and going beyond our borders and doing wonders in the global arena? So both of you, please, I would want to take your thoughts here.
Thanks. Today e-commerce penetration in Pakistan is about 2.5%. Compare that to in Indonesia, which is 22% So, and the beautiful thing about e-commerce is that it really, like I said, it democratizes someone's participation in the industry. So you don't need to have, dukaan in Sadr that you're renting out and that you have to pay a significant amount of your money for. And what it does is by lowering the cost, it allows people to be able to participate in it. What's really been interesting for us as we evolve, there's one thing is that I think one e-commerce seller creates between 3 to 5 jobs. So let's say we have 100,000 sellers. We've at least created 200 to 250,000 jobs, alhamdulillah, in the economy, and we have an aspiration to create a lot more. And what's been very interesting is a lot of our sellers have evolved from being traders to being small-scale manufacturers, because we kept pushing them, price kam kare, quality behtar kare, price kam kare, quality behtar kare. And over time, he kind of said, look, I can't decrease the price and improve the quality if I'm still getting things from China. What that did was that pushed them towards starting manufacturing themselves. And that's a very significant step, actually, because now what's going around in in e-commerce is not necessarily the things that are just coming from China. There's actually things that are being manufactured in Pakistan. The leg that we are now at Daraz working on is how do we take these small-scale manufacturers, and in areas where they are competitive, and they are competitive in certain industries, how do we allow them access to the countries, all the countries that Alibaba distributes in? So inshallah, in the next year, you will actually start seeing that if someone can be sitting in Vietnam and ordering from AliExpress, and the product will come from Pakistan.
Inshallah.
This will be very powerful, because direct to consumer, you extract a better margin. You can actually get participation not from the top tier guys that sell to the Walmarts and the Amazons perhaps. They're the guys that are sort of in the mid-level that don't have the capacity to be able to do large-scale orders. They can actually go direct to consumers. And I think that's where we can really turn a huge page, where we can take significant advantage of our price advantage that we have in Pakistan. But all of that will still, to be honest, have an underlying premise of policy that is consistent, a policy that allows us to be able to do it, and one that makes it very easy. And so we're already engaged very actively with the government to make the policy easy and see how actually from a corporation perspective, how can we facilitate to create that ease, not only in terms of policy, but also technology that's needed behind it. Because that, just going from 2.5% to 25%, one, like I said, democratization of the local economy, and number two, adding your exports to it, for us, it can really allow us to get closer to our mission, which is to uplift communities through the power of commerce.
That's wonderful to hear. Imran, any thoughts?
Well, absolutely wonderful to hear, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot of it was Imran's doing. He was with Daraz for the last 5 years.
I'm sure.
Essentially, if we take a look at the kind of impact that has been created and the potential there is, just to put this into perspective a little bit, all on the basis of, our captains, which are our drivers, and our customers, which are, people who take a ride, having cell phones. We have about 1 million captains that drive about 50 million people all around Pakistan, right? There's a good side and there's a bad side. I'll talk about the good side first, right? Through the use of that many people using those phones and generating that much data and then generative models coming in, we partnered up with the university and we came up with a model that was actually able to predict certain unpredictabilities that are very prevalent in a country like Pakistan. किसी का दिल चाहा तो कोई रोड पकड़ के खोद दी या किसी ने कोई रोड बंद कर दी क्योंकि कोई साहब आ रहे हैं निकल के या कोई हालात खराब हो गए तो that really impacts the flow of traffic, and when the flow of traffic is impacted, the business of our captains are impacted and the experience of our customers is impacted, right? To be able to gather all of that data via smartphones and bring it to the table in a university setting and make a predictive model out of it, and then to better understand how these things will work when a situation arises the next time it happens, and then taking it forward and implementing it in other countries that Careem operates in. For example, there's Jordan, there's Morocco, there's KSA, there's UAE, right? The potential is immense, but also the fact that once you started bringing this technology and you tried to roll it out, you also found out that almost 25% to 30% of the captains that you have don't have a recent enough smartphone to support that app update.
There we go.
Right? It's two sides of the same picture, but that is exactly where indigenization, local manufacturing, better accessibility, smartphone for all effort that the Minister Sahab is leading, all of that comes into play. And I do think that, with that one without the other still leaves each other incomplete. A lot of potential out there, but a lot of work to be done before we get
This
there.
brings me to collaboration, right? And this is the last question, then we'll go to the audience if they have any questions. Fatma, Amir Saab, Abdur Rahman Saab, collaboration seems to be the key. What are your thoughts, if you can quickly share with everyone here? how can we collaborate better? I mean, I see huge, as a moderator, I see huge potential on this stage right now that can be a game changer for our country. This is the potential, between these 5 people we have. What do you think? Where is the collaboration most needed? How can we make it happen?
Thank you. I think the esteemed panelists have already referred to the fact that connecting the dots and ensuring seamless, long-term, consistent implementation is absolutely key. Because you can see from the examples that even has been given from the perspective of the business model of Kareem or the business model of Daraz as well. It is not just that they are providing a connect to the customers, they are also looking at the other ancillary sectors as well, and also the linkages with the financial institutions for the money to the transactions to take place. At the backbone is also the telecom sector, to make sure that there is continuity in terms of internet and as well as the bandwidth which will connect throughout Pakistan. It should not be confined to a certain, I mean, there is a lot of work that is being done and consistent investment that is being made. But I will look at it from a perspective of, where we are adding value as Abacus. Now, as a services provider, as a professional services firm, where we heavily have invested in not only building the ecosystem in Pakistan, hope to facilitate that even further from a technology and outsourcing, but serving 30 countries from here and seeing that we're emerging in an environment where we are global citizens. We are also looking at the next generation of workforce, which is quite frankly not only just digital natives, they're far beyond this. They don't identify just with national identities, but they identify with brands, and they identify with how can I add value and the purpose of how I serve. And in that, how is the industry or even my smart device enabling me to make that transaction, but also maintain a certain lifestyle. So it actually goes back to what was being mentioned in terms of the data. What are the data analytics over your consumer or according to your customer? And who is your customer at the end of the day? Who are we enabling at the end of the day? That is extremely important. So what are these touch points, and do we have on a strategic level a governance framework which will enable implementation on a consistent basis, build the trust, which will fast forward and leapfrog Pakistan to be relevant, quite frankly speaking. It all becomes relevant on the global. The potential is immense.
It is,
but we have to engage with each other to build that infrastructure, and that's what's happening in other countries. I mean, I'll give you the example, just a very quick example. We're working in the African markets very aggressively, where in different countries in the African continent, and where we're looking at open banking, Apigee development, connecting the telecoms as well as the service providers over there, including the banks, and providing opportunities to the small and medium-sized entrepreneurs where they can launch their businesses and ease of doing businesses. But they are also providing a brand which is conducive for investors to come in. We see that happening in the Middle East, we see that happening in the Caribbean. Why is it that we cannot be consistent in Pakistan? So the collaboration is not just the private sector companies, it has to have long-term support from the government, from the public sector entities, which will fast forward and leapfrog us.
Thank you very much, Fatma. In the interest of time, Amir Saab, if we can take the questions from the audience. And
I just want to add something very quickly. Please. I think the irony this country faces is wherever we look, we find tons of opportunities. We also find low-hanging fruits. I think we are making some mistake in every sector. We miss out on a critical ingredient, which is we don't bake our policies completely, and there is no integration in the policy. From the telecom operators to the solution providers to the content creators, to the mobile phone manufacturers, there needs to be an integration. We need to intelligently formulate a plan. हम खाना पका लेते हैं, उसमें कोई ऐसी चीज़ छोड़ देते हैं. We all want to do it. आप देखें, मज़े की बात ये, हम सब करना चाहते हैं. Everybody, the government is interested, the private sector, everybody wants to do. हो नहीं रहा. कोई चीज़ मिस हो रही है हमसे.
Of course, and I think that's besides skill, it needs a lot of willingness. It needs a lot of dedication to have come up with a integrated, cohesive, holistic policy. And I think your point is very well communicated. With that, I want to open up, if there are any questions for this esteemed panel, any one of you who wants to ask something, please, let's go ahead.
Hello. Okay. My question is from Imran. Imran, when your captains are using smart devices, their operations is very data, usage intensive data usage, versus what the RAS customer needs a connectivity for a particular time and then it's off. It doesn't matter. So, in how many cities of Pakistan you guys have identified that the proper data coverage is there? I'm sure you guys have went down to 15, 20 cities and now come to confine few cities, maybe 2, 3, 4. So if you can explain, because we also discussed the 5G penetration and the 4G penetration in the country, and what's your feedback on that?
I think it's a two-pronged issue. You're absolutely right. The bigger cities that Kareem operates in today, which is dominantly Karachi, Lahore and Islamabad, coverage is such that there is what you call a definitive marketplace balance where you're actually able to create the right level of handshakes between captains and customers, right? When we go ahead and we try to sort of implement the same things in cities, and by the way, we operate in about 11 or 12 cities, but the degree of the handshakes that are created vary vehemently by way of coverage that is present. So even, by the way, in Karachi today, I'll give you the example of Karachi, bear with me because I am from Karachi. There are areas like, the port, the Kimari and Manora port, and now, Behriya town, which is on the far reaches, where you do currently still get those challenges that are still prevalent today. And it's a little bit mind-boggling, to be honest, to sort of, just put into perspective the fact that this is one of the largest cities in the world and you're still talking about not having the right signals for somebody to hail a ride, right? It is still there, and we need that solution coming in as well. But also the fact that perhaps for the gig economy as a whole, I'll just use this opportunity to maybe plug something in over here as well. Data is one of the cheapest, available packages we have is what we have in Pakistan. But even for captains, the way that they operate today, it is quite data heavy. Economics sometimes end up not making as much sense, right? So between these two things, there is a very big consideration of how we're sort of, managing it, how we're creating those handshakes, and how we're creating the right level of economics for captains to begin with. But I do appreciate the question. It hits the right notes, absolutely.
How many cities is the RAS operating in?
Last year we did deliveries to about 550 towns, villages and cities.
That's wonderful.
550.
So that's the last question probably we'll take.
Sorry, I hope you can hear me better now. So you raised a very important point, Amir, regarding the agri sector, which needs to be addressed. But an important element for us to develop some of these solutions is, from a devices side, is the IoT devices and relevant solutions. So as device manufacturers, do you see, and what all in your view we need to do to make sure that we don't look at our handset or our device play around handsets only, but potentially move a little towards IoT devices as well?
I think, sir, it's a very important question, but the answer to this question is very painful. So I will explain to you very quickly why. Why have we been able to produce handsets locally? It is only because of the fact that the smuggling of these products is controlled because of the DERB system employed by the PTA. This is the only reason. Now, the ministry and the EDB approached us to give them proposals on assembling laptops in Pakistan. So my reply to that is that the carry, जो carry होती है, जो खेपिया लेके आता है, वो एक लैपटॉप पे 3 से 5,000 रुपए है. अगर आप लैपटॉप के कंपोनेंट्स की ड्यूटी ज़ीरो भी कर दें तो भी हम उससे compete नहीं कर सकते. देखें, वी आर कंपेयरिंग आवरसेल्व्स कि जी रीजनल क्या हो रहा है, हम वही करेंगे. पाकिस्तान इज़ वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द रीजन. पाकिस्तान में आज भी 50% ऑफ द इकोनॉमी is operating off the books, and also पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो challenges हैं वो बहुत different हैं. लिहाजा जो दूसरी IoT products हैं उनके लिए ज़्यादा उम्मीद ना रखें, इसलिए कि उनकी viability नहीं होगी until and unless we are able to control illegal trade in Pakistan. Illegal trade is an enemy of the organized sector and manufacturing sector. And this is one of the big reasons why manufacturing has not taken off in Pakistan, because हर चीज़ चाइना से under invoice होके या border से illegally smuggle होके आ जाती है. So that's a very serious detriment to the industry. But there is another side to it. देखें, for investment in electronics you need volumes. If you want to set up SMT lines for motherboard assembly, you need volumes. Now, because we have the mobile phone sector where there is a demand of more than 30 million mobile devices every year, 30 million, 3 करोड़ devices चाहिए. So वो जो 3 करोड़ devices हैं उनके लिए दुनिया की हर investment viable है. If you give the right tarification, cascading हो tariff में, आपको जो करवाना है आप करवा सकते हैं, viable है.
This has a big if.
देखिए, बगैर if के नहीं होता ना. अगर आपने इंडिया ने सोलर पैनल्स पे, you would be amazed, 40% ड्यूटी लगाई हुई है. 40%. पहले 20 लगाई, फिर सोलर सेल पे 20 लगाई और कंप्लीट पैनल पे 40 लगाई. एंड नाउ टुडे इंडिया इज बिकमिंग द पावर हाउस ऑफ सोलर पैनल्स मैन्युफैक्चरिंग. एंड सेम थिंग दे आर डूइंग फॉर मोबाइल फोन्स ऑल्सो. सो एक तो ये आयरनी है, ये हमारे सामने है. मैं 2 बातें और कहना चाहता हूँ सर एक्सपोर्ट के हवाले से. देखिए, 3 चीज़ें हम मिस कर रहे हैं मेरे ख्याल में. एक हम ये मिस कर रहे हैं कि I would like to say that a half-baked policy is useless. It's just plain useless. दूसरी चीज़ मैं कहना चाहता हूँ, timing is everything.
And this reminds me that I have a panelist who has a flight to catch, 3:30. Timing is really becoming critical. Okay. So thank you very much, Amir Saab, and thank you very much everyone for being here, listening to this panel, and thank you very much to all the panelists.